So we are talking about the Sigma 100 to 400 today. I'm out in the bullpen, as you can probably tell, at my team's field, and I've been borrowing the 100 to 400 to check it out. I'm interested in lightening the load, so to speak, that I carry during games. I normally use the 200 to 600 Sony, and I really like it. However, when I'm carrying everything in my backpack, makes for a really heavy backpack, and I would like to lighten up if I can. However, I don't know that a 100 to 400 for me is really the way to go for a couple of very specific reasons. First of all, the image quality on the 100 to 400 from Sigma is absolutely stellar. It is, I would say, sharper than the 200 to 600 from Sony that I have and I've used for a couple of years now. The colors, I think, are a little punchier, probably, on the 100 to 400 from Sigma. I've included a couple pictures here that, there's no frame of reference when you take a picture with one lens and then you take a picture of the same kind of situation. There's never a way to duplicate it exactly, especially for sports photography like I do, or news photography. So suffice to say, I've been really happy with the color and the contrast and the sharpness that I'm getting with the 1 to 4. It's way better than I thought it might be. I didn't have low expectations, but let's just say it's exceeded the expectations that I did have in a really good way. It is quite light, although I'll be honest, I don't really like push-pull lenses. I haven't for ever now. I had started out with Canon in the 90s, and that was kind of all you had. There was no such thing as internal zoom, anything at that point. And, I've gone through many Canon push-pull lenses, including the GOAT for the 35 to 350, which was arguably, I'd say, one of the best lenses Canon's ever made. And I dearly wish that Sony had something similar to that. But I digress. So the one thing I really don't like about the Sigma is probably the push-pull, and that's not a problem with Sigma. That's not their fault that I don't like something. It's just a personal taste. However, there is something that I really don't like that would probably prevent me from buying this lens, just because I would have to change my workflow so much, or my shooting, I don't want to say style, but I would have to change my shooting enough that it feels uncomfortable. And that is the fact that it will not zoom and focus. It will stay autofocused on where you were at the beginning of the zoom. And then if you stop and then you lift your finger off the focus button, which I have on the back, and then hit it again, yes, it will refocus and it will track if you're not zooming okay, but not really well, but I can forgive that. But I don't want to say unforgivable, but the part that I don't like is the fact that it will not zoom and focus as the Sonys will. Now, I haven't tried the 100 to 400 Sony, but I don't think I will, because of probably the third reason why I don't think a 100 to 400 is right for me, is because I shoot a lot of baseball in the summers. I'm the team photographer for this team, and I work for a newspaper, and we are the newspaper of record for the Little League World Series. And, of course, I shoot a lot of baseball regardless. So the 400 is just not long enough, I find, for baseball. I can get an okay picture of the pitcher, although not upper body, without having to zoom. I can with the 200 to 600. I cannot get a more full frame picture of the infielders that I really like when they're set up on the baselines, the third baseman, the second baseman, the shortstop, from first base. I can get a picture fine of home plate, but it's just not long enough really to even get the whole infield the way I would like which the 200 to 600 can get. So that's really my concern, I guess I would say, about the 100 to 400. It is not from Sigma. It is not the image quality at all. It is superb, and I do think it exceeds that of the 200 to 600 Sony. And like I said, the autofocus appears to be good enough. I know some people will say, well, it's their contemporary lens. It's not meant for sports. Well, you know, this idea of something being meant for sports is a new concept, and not something that someone like me, who's been shooting for 30 years, believes is something that needs to be paid attention to or really even talked about, because for a long time there was no such thing as a lens made for sports. And still, if you look at Canon's lenses, the L glass is it for their professional quality stuff, and there's no sports version of any of their lenses. They just make great stuff. The same thing with Sony. Now, you could say the G Master stuff is maybe a little better. I don't necessarily think it's true than the G stuff. So regardless, I think it's more that it's the 100 to 400 length that I think doesn't really fit more of what I need, especially for baseball. For something like high school football, which I shoot tons of, we cover a lot of high schools here in central Pennsylvania. So I shoot a high school football game every night from the end of August until beginning of November, pretty much. So yeah, I do a lot of that. That lens, or that length, I should say, might have some use there, but that's to be seen. I will have this Sigma for another month. Little League World Series is coming up here in about a week and a half, and I will be trying that lens for that. So you will see more video content about using that lens for that shooting, for shooting those events, which I think probably will be a little better than the 200 to 600 as far as lens length goes, because you don't need a 600 millimeter at Little League, and the 200 millimeter is really kind of too tight for home plate when you're at the first base in the photo well. So the 100 400 might be perfect for that, quite frankly. So we will see. Until then, though, thanks to Sigma US for lending me the lens for about 2 months now, and more content with this lens very soon. Thanks for watching, folks. I really appreciate it.